Hello, viewers. Welcome back. I thought I'd give you another episode involving a conversation with a person who's very interested in Guadalcanal like myself. So today will be Joe Mueller. I was going to bring him off screen, but I forgot to, and you'll see Joe Mueller down to the left. He's retired U.S. Marine Colonel, and he's one of my friends, and he's went to Guadalcanal many times, and I've met him a couple of times on Guadalcanal. So today we'll be just talking about his visits to Guadalcanal. And just like we had the last episode, or when I spoke to someone, it'd be two Guadalcanal nerds just talking Guadalcanal. So hope you enjoyed today's video. So Joe, can you tell us a little about your background?
Well, Dave, I'd always wanted to go in the U.S. military, and probably when I was in the fourth grade, I saw this movie Guadalcanal Diary, and that kind of solidified me into going into the Marine Corps. And as you know, in the Marine Corps, we are always studying the history of the Marine Corps. But I kind of focused on Guadalcanal because I thought it was a pretty distinctive battle in World War II, and that it lasted for a good 6 months, and it was a three-dimensional battlefield. You had land, air, and sea all involved, and the issue was always in doubt. And probably the book that really got me interested, and I read it when I was in high school, was Macmillan's book, With the Old Breed. And although George McMillan was not with the division on Guadalcanal, he joined him in Melbourne and then went through the rest of the war with them. But he did get to interview a lot of the veterans of the campaign, and I was very fortunate to interview quite a few of these veterans. And the first trip that I took over to Guadalcanal was in 1977. Mitch Paige was our tour guide.
Yeah, that's a pretty good tour guide. Medal of Honor. The viewers, I mean, if you watch my channel, I obviously have an episode on Mitchell Paige and the area he earned a Medal of Honor. So when you have a Medal of Honor as your tour guide taking you around, it's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and there were a lot of interesting people on that Guadalcanal tour. There was a mixture of World War II Marines, Korean War Marines. I think I was the only Vietnam veteran on that particular tour.
So this was 72?
No, 1977.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it might have been the 30th, but yeah, it's only 30-something years afterwards.
Yeah, it was 35. That was the what I want to say, the draw card to it. It was the 35th anniversary. Guys had gone back before. Guys like Jack Parr had gone back and things like that. But it was really kind of off the beaten track. And like I said, we had Mitch Paige, but the guy that I really wish I would have talked to a lot more was a guy by the name of Larry Gherkin, who I talked to subsequently to that, but he had been in the 5th Marines, and he had gone down on the 19th of August attack down at the Matanicow Village, and he was a BAR man, but I think his recollections of things were quite a bit different, because he was of the impression that that the ambush had taken place, or not the ambush, but the attack and battle had taken place over by the Mendana Hotel, and that's west of Point Cruz, but everything took place east of Point Cruz.
And you're talking about the Getchy Patrol. Well, I want to really talk about that later.
Okay.
I know you were involved in some of the attempted battlefield recovery of the Marines there. So when you went back, were you leading tours then? And Joe, for the viewers, I'll mention it now. Joe is an author. You've seen. I'll bring it back up. I had his book there. He's the author of the Guadalcanal 42 from Osprey. What year did this come out, Joe? Initially, the first edition.
I want to say it came out right around the time of the 50th anniversary is when that came out. So that'd been around about 92.
Oh yeah, 50th to 92. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
It's good. Yeah, that would have actually been a good time for it to come out. So, it's still in publication, I think. Is it, Joe? I know you can still get it. You can still get it from, I don't know if Osprey, but you can definitely get it on in secondhand or the used bookstores and online. It's a very good book. It's I'm not saying that because Joe's sitting here with me. We're not in the same room, so I'm not really afraid. He could probably get me out for it. But no, seriously, it's a very good book. It's a good overall book. I mean, it's not a thick one. I know I have it. As you can see, I have a couple of books behind me. Where's my Guadalcanal? I got the whole, all this is Guadalcanal, but here we go, Joe. I have it in the prize spot, but this is it. And you can see it's not that thick. For those of you who are familiar with Osprey books, it's a good overall, and it has. I love the little drawings in there. Very very well done. So I highly recommend that book, especially as a general view of the Guadalcanal. It also has the U.S. Army's, even though it says the Marines Strike Back. A lot of people forget the U.S. Army was actually there, but it does include the U.S. Army in there, and the Navy and the Air Force, which Joe mentioned was a three-dimensional campaign. So, yes, that's how I first knew Joe. I read the book, and then I met Joe in 2018 when I was on Guadalcanal. Joe leads tours for the military. Let's see if I can find it. I'll let you speak about that in a second, Joe. See if I can go straight to it. You can see, viewers, I'm still not technically great with these. But what's the name of the company, Joe? Military Heritage Tours?
Military Historical Tours.
Tours, MH2.
Virginia.
It's a large company, and they do travels throughout the world in different battlefield sites. But Joe specializes in Guadalcanal and Tarawa. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct, yeah.
And Joe's been going to, how long have you been leading tours to Guadalcanal?
I would say I started in the 90s, somewhere around about, well, actually, I take that back. I went over on my own quite a bit. And then when I retired in 01, so about 02, I started working for MHT, just doing their Guadalcanal and their Tarawa tours.
And you've basically been going every year, every 2 years?
About every 2 years, we seem to go, depending on the situation on Guadalcanal.
And so you missed out on this year for a number of reasons. So you've got one scheduled for next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, for 2023, we're doing the workup on that literally as we speak.
And normally that's in August. Is that correct? Because it normally coincides with anniversaries.
Right, coincides with the anniversary. We've done them in November in the past and in September, but we try to do it in conjunction with the anniversary.
Yeah, because a few commemoration ceremonies. It's always good to visit there when the ceremonies are going, because it gets you in the atmosphere of it, so to speak. Yeah, so I've met him on 2 times over there, and we walked the battlefields quite a bit together. And I've got a photo. Hold on. There we are. I think that was 2019. So we're standing.
Probably so. Yeah, it was 2019.
Yeah, I've tried to look for the 2018 one, but yeah, it's the 2019 one. You stay with me for a few days. So for the viewers, this is on top of what was known as Hill 73 during the campaign. Is now the U.S. Memorial. It's a great area. I've got a video on that itself. So we're basically looking northeast, and that's Matanical River's right below us. and that's overlooking Iron Bottom Sound. So it's a great view and a great place to visit the battlefield. And it's a great place to take photos from. You can see Joe's a bit of a small fella, as they say in Australia. Well, I'll get that one off, Joe, and I'll go back to you, the book. So yeah, what I'll think, we just had a few questions, but what are some of your best experiences visiting Guadalcanal that you can think of?
Well, of course, there's a lot of changes. When I first got there, things for the first several years were really pretty primitive, and of course now, you can basically go to an ATM machine. You can go and get coffee or croissants at that little restaurant that we went to. So Guadalcanal is really kind of emerging into the 21st century, which is a good thing. But a lot of deforestation and a lot of the materials that were laying around above ground when I was there have all gone into the scrapper yard. So those things that you could see are they're rapidly changing, and of course vandalism to the monuments and things like that occur, which is kind of tragic.
I'm glad you brought that up, because even a couple of days ago I was looking on Google Earth. I mean, it's been since 2020 since I was last on the ground, and I've got friends over there who send me photos all the time. I was looking at Google Earth, just doing some more plotting like I normally do in research, and just around the Barcelona area where the Battle of Henderson Field was, all that area is being cleared. Right. I really want to get in there and record the areas, because as you know, that was some of the least visited areas because it's a thick, swampy, nasty jungle, and now they're clearing it. And I'm just thinking all those barbed wire lines and foxhole bunker holes and all that are going because they're putting the gardens in, and that's going to be destroyed. And I'd love to get in there and do some recording. I was hoping to go there this year, but I'm definitely going to go next year. And you can just Google Earth shows the encroachment, because as you know, but the viewers probably don't know that Guadalcanal, Honiara is the capital city, and the only way to expand is down the coast. And now that since the population of Honiara is expanding, they're actually moving up into the hills, and they're encroaching on what used to be areas that they couldn't live on. But now, due to modern technology with bulldozers we always had bulldozer, but better construction methods and means, they're moving up on the ridges. And that's one of the it's problematic because, one, they're destroying the battlefields, and two, they're uncovering all the unexploded ordnance that for years is obviously left untouched because no one lived there. And that's why it's a major problem in the Solomon Islands right now with the unexploded ordnance. And as you know, the battlefield preservation with the Solomon Island government isn't that great. There's only one area where it's been designated as a national park, and that's the Bloody Ridge Peace Park, they call it. But then, in saying that, there's still squatters on there, and I just seen something 2 or 3 months ago where they've actually issued a sign, a proclamation that says now you have to leave, for the squatters to leave the battlefield. I try to equate that to viewers and listeners, and I say, look, it'd be just like me showing up on Gettysburg National Battlefield with a tent and building a little shack there and go, well, I'm living here now. I'm squatting on this national battlefield. This is my, I don't care what you say. And that's basically how it is over there. But yeah, but the destruction is sad, really. But once again, it's modernization. Yeah. So tell me about some of the veterans. You already mentioned Paige. How was it with Paige taking you around? Did he take you to the areas where he actually earned his Medal of Honor?
Yeah, he did. He took us up along what's that? Langakiki, not Langakiki, but that
Cola Ridge. They call it Cola Ridge.
Yeah, Cola Ridge.
Paige here, by the way, for the viewers, Mitchell Paige.
And he kind of showed all the showed the positions that he was at, and then he also named all the people that were in his machine gun section. And so that was I think he's probably one of the few guys that I went over there with. There was another guy, another Marine. He was a second Marine Division Marine, but he was in 2-2. He landed on Tulagi and then went over to Guadalcanal. And his name was Bob Moberg. He's long since passed away.
Hmm.
And we actually walked around in the areas that he fought in, and we even found some of the foxholes that he had dug and when he was over there with Second Marine Division on Guadalcanal.
His actual foxhole.
Yeah, it was really kind of interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, I would imagine.
To
How
go
was
back
his
to
reaction?
he was pretty good all the way through till we got to Tarawa, and that was, like, he really got emotional. Was
I
in
can imagine.
Another guy, another Marine that I stayed in contact with for many years was a guy by the name of Charles Buser. Now, he was attached to the Air Wing, and he was an interesting character. Most of what I spoke with him about occurred all around Henderson Field. And he got pretty emotional when he actually went into the cave underneath Pagoda Hill.
Yes.
And his interesting story was on that night of the 13th of September, when the attack on Bloody Ridge occurred. They were told to grab their rifles and a bandolier of ammunition, and they formed a skirmish line on the south end of Henderson Field, and they were told to stay there and to repel the attack. Fortunately, it never came, but that's how tight things were, that they were pulling people from the Air Wing to do perimeter duty. And there were a few other guys whose names escape me that were there. One guy I remember, and I just can't remember his name, because I told him, I said, "You're my hero." He was one of the oldest guys that I ever took on a tour. He was like 92 years old.
Oh.
And he was a first lieutenant, and he wasn't with the Raiders, but he was down there in the October battle down there at the Matanicow. And it was kind of interesting to talk to him because he was somewhat of an older guy. He was a 26-year-old first lieutenant on Guadalcanal. And a lot of the vets I just spoke to on the phone back here in the States, and I've got notes on my conversations with them. A lot of them were from the 5th Marines. Nobody really, other than Mitchell Paige, strikes me coming out from the 7th Marines. So it was mostly 5th Marines guys, are Marines. And there was one guy by the name of Bob Hutchins. He was I think he was in 3-7. And he was up there when Mitchell Paige was fighting, but he was on the far side of the ridge.
Hmm.
And I wish I could think of this other Marine's name. He was in 2-5, and he was in Hershey's book, Into the Valley.
Yes.
He was part of that battle. And
October battle.
The October battle, and he was pretty interesting as well, because he explained to me that they didn't have the water-cooled machine guns. They had the 30 caliber light machine guns. And
was he in a heavy machine gun platoon though? As you know, the normal weapons platoon attached to the companies had the light machine guns.
Right.
The heavy guns were attached, but they did have the lights.
Right. Yeah, but whatever section he was with, they all had the light machine gun. They did not have the because I asked him about carrying the water can and and the heavy tripod and all that. And he said, we never had that machine gun. We had light machine guns.
Because Casamento, it earned a Medal of Honor. He was giving it to it in the 80s. He was a light machine gunner when they were moved. Yeah. They moved forward near Parliament House. So you were there. I know you told me for the 50th anniversary. Is that correct? 1992. So I've seen photos of the 50th, and there's a lot of Guadalcanal stars, I will call them. The guys who were very famous in the Guadalcanal campaign, and you would have met a few of them. There was a few Medal of Honor earners there, and Sir Jacob Vuza, Martin Clemens, the Coast Watcher. They were all been there, and you would have met all those guys. Is that correct?
Yeah, Martin Clemens was there, but the heavy hitters were all busy because the flag ranks all wanted to talk to him, and all the dignitaries from all the countries. So you really didn't get a chance to really sit down too much for them. It was huge. The Marine Corps really leaned forward into it. They built a hardback tent compound in the Rove police compound there. I think where like that soccer field is over there.
Yeah.
Okay, that was all hardback tents, and that was set up not only for the Marines, but any veteran that showed up there could have accommodations and medical.
That would have been you probably didn't realize it when you were there, but yeah. Actually, I was at the U.S. Embassy in Canberra. There's a Marine Embassy Guard then in '92, and I was trying to get the regional security officer from the U.S. Embassy. I remember he said, "Oh, I'm going over to Guadalcanal," and he knew one, I was in the Marine, and two, I was loving military history. And for the 50th, and I tried my best to get over. I begged and pleaded and promised my first child, but unfortunately I never got over there. I really wanted to go, but yeah, it was quite amazing.
It was. ACMAC was there, and they had a flight of Hornets that came in. The FA-18s came in, and C-130 came in, and it was huge. It was huge.
I've got a little medal that one of the policemen, actually, I seen one of the Royal Solomon Island Police Force. He has a medal, and I think I might have seen it. I think I might have gave you one. I don't know. It had the 50th Guadalcanal 50th anniversary. And they gave it to all the serving police officers at the time. And I remember I was at Rove, which is the police headquarters, in 2018. And I looked in a garbage bin, and there was something like 15 of these medals. And most of them had mold on them and things, but I was just grabbing them like, what are you throwing these away? They're made in Australia, but they're handing out to the government. But yeah, some of them still wear the little ribbon from the 50th on there.
Yeah, they did a special mint set of coins for that as well. Like I said, it was huge, and I think everybody knew at that time that the vets were going to start dropping off pretty rapidly.
92. Yeah, a lot of them are in their late 60s, early 70s by that stage. And probably geez, that would have been a good one to see. Now, the battlefield recoveries. I know you were heavily involved in the battlefield recoveries of the missing Marines, and mainly Marines. Is that correct? I think that you went after the Marines there, and I don't want to leave the Army out. Did you meet any Army vet? You would have taken a few Army vets around too, and you would have met a few U.S. Army and U.S. Navy vets during your travels.
Well, the most interesting Navy vet I met was a pilot from the Enterprise. I believe the Enterprise was damaged in the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands.
That's correct. Yeah,
and they diverted planes to Henderson Field, and he talked about how primitive it was compared to living on the aircraft carrier. He couldn't wait to get back to the aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it was a big shock. I've read a few accounts of those guys. They landed and went, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
maybe the life of a naval aviator isn't so bad.
Yeah,
get me out of here. Especially
yeah,
and they had the tents. The pilots actually had tents by that stage. The poor infantry guys didn't have tents. They go, "No, mate, you sleep in this hole. Here's your poncho. You're lucky." Yeah. So getting back to my battlefield recovery, you were heavily involved in the Getchy Patrol, and you were mentioning a bit of it at the start.
Right.
So I'll go back to the Getchy Patrol here. I've got some photos, and for my viewers, the guys who watch this show, they don't really need a background on the Guadalcanal campaign because there's enough. By this stage, if they've watched this amount, they know roughly what's happening in the Guadalcanal campaign. And I have a whole separate episode on the Getchy Patrol, and I had Jeff Raker on with the Missing Marines not too long ago, and we discussed it in detail too. So if you want to know in depth about the Getchy Patrol, what I would say was go to my video with the Getchy Patrol, and also go to the interview I had with Jeff. We go into a lot of details. But I have a few good photos here from my friend Peter Flavin. We're all like a little nerd group, all these same names. We bounce things off each other. So Joe's part of this little group. We bounce ideas and Guadalcanal info off. So it's a great resource to have in Joe, by the way. So I'll go to the Getchy. That's not it. John Ennis. And John Ennis, I've got a picture of John. Might as well talk about John now. I've discussed him a few times. John was the Australian expat who lived on Guadalcanal for a number of years. He was the guy to go to on the ground. He did a lot of research, and he was involved in battlefield recovery. And plus, John used to take these vets around all the time, and he's got these firsthand accounts from all the veterans, and he passed on a lot of great information. And I think Joe met John a number of times, and I think John, I've seen some photos of John. John came over to the States at one stage at the Marine Corps Archives. Is that correct?
Yeah, he went up to
with you, yeah,
archives, I think up in Suitland, Maryland, and did quite a bit of research work up there. And he went to at least one 1st Marine Division reunion, if not two, to meet these vets. So he really was kind of Mr. Guadalcanal because he lived there all those years. I met him either in 90 or I think it was 90. It was before the 50th. So it had to be 90. And he kind of tagged along with us. I put together a small tour. I did my own tours back then, 4 or 5, half a dozen guys. And those guys were all vets on that one. Bill Bewley was there. Of course, he was the guy that Vusa came through the lines through, or was a paratrooper, a paramarine who fought on Tulagi, and Bob Moberg, who was in the intel section of 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines, was there, and Bob Hutchins, who was in 3-7, was there. So it was a real small group of guys, but we got a lot of traveling done because we get a rental car and off we go, and we met John over at the Mendana.
Mendana's the hotel, yeah.
Yeah, that developed into a really worthwhile friendship.
Yeah, he's a very good resource. I wish he was still around for. I could bounce things off of him. And I've mentioned him in a few episodes, especially one of my Barcelona episodes. I did some. I carried on some of his work that he really didn't get a chance to do in depth on Barcelona. So I've been carrying on some of his stuff, work there. Yeah. So now, Getchy Patrol. Oh, right. I go back to John. One thing I want to say about John is he was made an honorary Marine. For those who probably don't realize, he was the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Made him an honorary Marine. I was there in 2019. I want to get this right. Maybe 2018. Yeah, I think it's 2019. Anyway, part of his ashes was this big ceremony at Bloody Ridge. He was scattered on Bloody Ridge, which I thought was quite fitting. The Marine Corps was engaged in that. Now, Getchy Patrol. So tell me your involvement in the the expedition to find some of the missing Marines from the infamous or famous, because of which side you are, Getchy Patrol.
Well, somewhere in the mid 80s, I had read Eric Hamill's book on Guadalcanal, and it
mentioned
that the remains had actually been found, and it was an excerpt out of Leatherneck magazine for his upcoming book. And so I talked to Eric. I lived up in Northern California, and he gave me the name of quite a few people. And as you know, like on all things in police work, you talk to one person, he'll give you 2 or 3 names. You talk to those people, they'll give you 2 or 3 names. So after a while, I had put together quite an extensive package on the Getchy Patrol. And now my memory escapes me, but there was another guy in Southern California by the name of Tom Thomas. And he did a lot of work when we went over there in '87 on the Getchy Patrol. A lot of graphics that he did, maps that he made, and we pretty much pinpointed the location of where they would be, and we put all that information together in a package, and we sent it over to what was then called the Central Identification Laboratory in Hawaii. Which is now JPOW, the Joint POW-MIA Accounting Task Force. But
DPAA now.
Right. Oh, is it? Okay. So
keep changing names, don't they?
The lower reservation of Fort Shafter down by the water. So they asked us to come over and put together a presentation, which we did. And they thought that there might be a good chance of finding these missing Marines. And of course, make a long story short, we went over there and we were not successful at all. And subsequently, we talked about this earlier before the program started with John Ennis. There was a university that put together a recovery, searched in an area that we had not searched in, and they were not any more successful than we were, sadly. So, like I say, the more than likely scenario is those remains were bulldozed when the Navy went into that area and developed it into a huge logistics base there. And the only person that probably could be found is William Bainbridge, who Bill Rust, was a warrant officer, who I met through Eric, and went down and talked to him and got extensive information from him down in Oceanside, California. Buried him near the mouth of the Matanikaw River, just off the trail, that roadway that you see on one of the other maps.
Yeah, I'll find it here.
Yeah, that one there. They buried him just a little north of that trail, about maybe 15 meters in from the river itself. But they found him floating in the river, and pulled him out and wrapped him in a poncho, and they buried him about, like I said, about 5 meters north of that, or south of that trail, and about 15 meters west of the west bank of the river. And
he was one of them he was the first one they sent back to try to make it back to the perimeter, I think.
No, the first one they sent back was Monk Arndt.
Okay, so he was one of them though they sent back, correct? And he
did that's kind of unknown, unless help me out here, Missing Marine. The author for Missing Marines.
Oh, Jeff Raker.
Yeah, Jeff. Okay, unless Jeff has something on that, it's kind of hard to say, because when I interviewed Monk Arndt down in not Monk Arndt, but when I interviewed Frank Few down in Australia, he told me that he recommended that if anybody could get back and make it back and get help, would be Monk Arndt. So Captain Ringer, who was in charge after Getchy was killed, sent Monk Arndt back. And then later they heard the shooting, and they sent Spaulding. And then Frank Few was the last survivor. So if there were other people that were sent back, I don't know about that, and I can't say. I mean, it's possible he would have been sent back, but it's a big unknown right now.
as you know him, then it's very gets very confusing and hectic in those type of situations. So here's a 19 or not 18 August 1942 that it's just been colorized. So these are all, hold on. So this is, and I've mentioned all this in my Getchy episode. This was taken on 18th of August. Getchy Patrol was the 12th of August, and this shows the terrain of how it looked basically during the whole campaign. Anyways, and obviously the village left after a couple of weeks, especially I think in the 19th they burned it down when the Marines did a punitive raid, so to speak, and looking for the guys who were responsible for it. So, and once again, here we go. This is from last year. One of my other friends, his son sent a drone up and took a photo of it. So this is the area. So this is the west bank of the Matanicow. And this is how it looks now, and you can just see the buildup in the area. It's what Joe was talking about before. And Joe and I were discussing how the area has been just built up so much now that. And also, too, in relation to the Getchy Patrol, that happened on the 12th. That whole area, this was the most heavily fought over and contested area in the Guadalcanal campaign, from Matanicow to the Point Cruz area. And this area, especially around where these bodies could have been buried, was subject to thousands and thousands of artillery rounds. It's almost like World War I no man's land. Just one night alone, the Marines fired 6,000 artillery shells in there when the night of the Japanese attack with the tanks. So just to show you. And then afterwards, what Joe was discussing, let me see if I can get a photo here. Hold on. You can see in the bottom right-hand side, that's still some of the Quonset huts left over because, as the viewers might know, Guadalcanal became a major logistical and training base after the war. So right after the campaign had ended, and we've got photos from 43 onwards, the whole place was basically bulldozed in this area here, concreted, and Quonset huts, or as the Australians call them, Nissan huts, were thrown up, and there's some actually Nissan huts still there. So in that whole area, unfortunately, if the bodies are there, they might be long gone, or as Joe mentioned, they might have been washed out to sea, or yeah, still, who knows? But how many expeditions did you do? One big one there when you were on the ground?
Yeah, that was the big one was in 1987. The Marine Corps Scholarship Fund, actually, there was a colonel by the name of Charlie Good who funded the whole thing. We got orders from the Marine Corps, but we got a lot of funding came from the Historical Foundation, and so that was all back, like I said, in 1987, and we just a lot of good work was put into that, both in the planning and the operational sequences, but they just weren't there, and if they were, some may have been buried as far north or far south as the road there, and no one's going to let you dig up a roadbed.
Yeah.
Not on the information that we had. And like I said, what was really, really sad was in that whole area that we dug in, we did not come up with one single World War II artifact. We did not come up with any shell casings, Coca-Cola bottles, nothing. The only thing, like I told you, was north of those Quonset huts in the village itself, some natives were sinking a foundation pole for a hut. They came across human remains, but those remains turned out to be Japanese. The only thing that we were successful in, but I don't think he was ever identified, is while we were down there, someone from Public Works Division came down with a box of human remains and accoutrements, indicating that the remains belonged to a Marine, and he was found way south on the Matanicow, in that area that I showed you where the old water pipe used to be. We went up there one day and we talked to that guy, and it was on the west bank of the river. So he would have not been related to the Getchy Patrol at all. And there, like you said, there was so much fighting in that region. That's very, very difficult to tell who he belonged to. And
There's a lot of Japanese remains, especially Japanese remains. The whole Honey Harbor is built on top of I'll say it's a major graveyard, because as you
right.
know, there's hundreds of Japanese and Marines and U.S. Army buried in the ground there, hundreds of them. Just unreal, really. Were you involved in another one? Any other?
No, that was the only one that I was involved in. The second recovery effort was a private enterprise that we discussed a little bit earlier here, that where John Ennis was kind of the point man on that one, and that was a little bit west of the Sea King restaurant, and I forget what the name of the church is, but if you go using north as the top of the picture, as you go west along the highway there, there's a circular structure there, and that's the church. And to the north of that circular structure, where you see there's like two trees and a little roadway that's in there, that was the area that they excavated in. We excavated where the little red arrow is. We excavated to the west of that red arrow where the Sea King restaurant is today, and we still didn't find anything either. So both locations didn't turn up anything very positive at all.
You never know; it could be found one day.
Well, like I said, Bainbridge would be the one to be found, because what these photos don't show is where that trail is, where it crosses the river, where you had it drawn in yellow. Yeah, there you go. Just to the north of that trail is a swampy area.
Path to Village is what you're talking about?
Yeah, just right up against the riverbank there on the west.
Oh, the road, yeah. So the yellow, yeah, the dark yellow line is the actual.
Yeah, the dark yellow line there. Okay, just to the north of that, not very far, is a swampy area. It was drained when we were there, but I could see it, and so they buried him north of the swampy area, but south of the of that trail. The government track is what that's called.
And you can see now how it looks today. And as we discussed earlier, there's been so many floods through there, and a lot of the banks, the river, especially 1942 bank is long gone, especially the mouth is long gone. So, I remember even when I was first time went there in 2009, it didn't look like this, especially the 2014 floods. It just wiped the front end of that river out. So a lot of that bank is gone, and you can see now how it looks today. That swampy area is probably where a lot of those shantytown buildings are to the right. You'll see a bunch of kids playing on the sandbank or in the sand. That's actually a soccer. They've made them a little soccer field. But to the right of that is probably your swampy area where you're talking about.
Well, to the right, and if you where you see that red building, like with the tin roof on it. Okay, if you come north of that, you'll see like a grove of trees and stuff like that.
So we'll come left. Yep. Yeah.
That's where that swampy area is.
Oh, yeah.
But I just wonder what those guys found on the construction site when they built that building, because that's a pretty big building.
Yeah, it's like a lot of things. If they find remains, I've spoken to some of the workers over there, and they don't really care. They see some bones, they'll throw them away. They throw them in another hole. They just dig a hole, throw them away. Because they've got, especially if I won't say what nationality they are, but if they're building certain buildings and they come across bones, either they'll throw them in the river, or they're just build another, or just dig a hole and throw them in. They're not gonna try to because that's just going to delay their construction, especially with, and unfortunately, unexploded ordnance. They find they'll just dig a hole and throw it in the hole, because once again, they got to build a building.
Yep.
And it's sad, really, but That's reality, I guess you could say, in way life is. And some of the times the Japanese bones, American bones, gets mixed in with the Japanese bones, and
Yep.
we don't have a time to save them and examine them. They just get cremated in the Shinto ceremony, so to speak. And I imagine a lot of Marine remains have been lost, and Army remains lost with the Japanese intermingled, and vice versa. There's probably some Japanese buried in some American graves somewhere, unidentified. American soldier, Marine, or Navy. It's probably Japanese soldier. It's just how things work. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a lot of my questions, Joe. Have you got anything else you want to really talk about Guadalcanal, or we talk about your upcoming tours and things, which are I recommend, and I do not because Joe's my friend. I recommend he has probably the best tour you can go on Guadalcanal. The other tours are good too, but Joe can add a sense of as a tour guide. I'd like to have a tour guide who's ex-military, which doesn't mean anything, but Joe's been there and done that, so to speak, and Joe's been on the island for years and years and years. And he knows his way around. He's spoken to the vets directly, and he has a good military sense of terrain and appreciation. So I think if I was going to do a tour, I'd do one with Joe. So it was.
Hey, Dave, what's the name?
Galloping horse. Sorry. I have to say this, Joe. Sorry, I've got to say this. In 2019, I won't say your age, but you can imagine Joe's no young chicken anymore. But the Galloping Horse Ridge, for those who've been to the Guadalcanal, if you go with the tour groups, you generally won't go up Galloping Horse unless you really volunteer to go there, because it's kind of off limits, as in not so much you can't go up there because you're not denied access. It's just because the physical effort it takes to get up to the Galloping Horse. And you could be in the best shape of anyone, but if you're not acclimatized to the Solomon Island, it's hard. It's as we used to call it in the Marine Corps, it's a hard hump up that ridge. But Joe, in 2019, I think you went up it in 2019, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, and I took him up Briggs Outpost, which I've seen a lot of younger and fitter guys can't even make it up the hill, but Joe, no problem, straight up the hill. I was thinking, looking back, I was sucking some air. I'm half his age. And I thought, well, he's gonna shame me, so I better keep going here. And I didn't know who was gonna have to do a defib or CPR on the other one, but Joe, I'll give him credit. He's got a good ticker on him, as they call it in Australia. Yeah. Anyway, so I had to put that in there, Joe. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Dave, what's the name of that? Well, I'll still call it JPAL because I'm not familiar with the new term. He used to come over there and search for remains.
They're DPAA now. Yeah. So when I was there in 2018, 2019, they were there. They was doing some good work on the island, and I went out to a few of their sites, and they were doing great work out there, and they're making some getting some good results. And obviously COVID stopped them, but I don't know if they're going back over anytime soon. Hope they would go over this year, next year, but I'm hoping they have further plans for more excavations, because there's a lot of work for them over there, and there was a few good sites that I know they could find some missing service persons there.
Did they? Do you know did they get everybody from Puller's a battalion on the east side of the Matanical when they went down there? I know they got some of the guys. Did they get them all? Do you know?
Probably. I don't really want to say yes and no.
Okay.
I don't know if that information's been released.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it might still be.
They were working in that area, and I know that there was achieving some results, positive results. So hopefully someday soon, all their results will be publicly released. But the efforts they were doing, they were kicking some goals. I'll just say that much. And there's another area on the Lunga that hopefully there's been a bit of research and a bit of effort push for that. That was the lost platoon, so to speak. That was that gave the Marine Corps a black eye. That was where Major General Vandergrift kind of left that platoon, in Bravo 1-1.
Right.
So they were pursuing. Remember, after Bloody Ridge, he sent 1-1 or a platoon or a couple of companies from 1-1 in pursuit of them up the Lunga, because he didn't send the Raiders because the Raiders are spent after Bloody Ridge, but he sent 1-1 in pursuit. And some of the Japanese, it wasn't committed, because you remember the one whole battalion on Bloody Ridge, the Japanese didn't commit for a number of reasons. So they had some fresh troops, but they set up a real strong rear guard, and those poor guys ran into that rear guard, and one platoon was cut off. And the company commander, if you remember, from
Right.
B Company, was saying, we need to commit more forces. So Vandergrift and the regimental commander didn't know what they had ran into, and he didn't want to leave the airfield exposed more. So they basically sacrificed a platoon of Marines. Bravo 1-1, never leave a Marine behind, but they left the whole platoon behind. Must have been obviously a hard decision to make, but it was strategically, it was the best decision. I mean, but you won't read much of that, as you know, in the history books, because
No.
you don't mention. But those poor guys, remember, after the war, I think they found 9 of them. I have to speak to Jeff Raker, but there's still the other ones still out there. So hopefully, fingers crossed, these guys will be brought home soon, in the near future. So I'd like to see those guys brought back, because there's one's a special meaning, because they were kind of left by their country to hang. They sacrificed them, so to speak. Yeah, but the guys are doing some good work there. I know. I just read somewhere that they're all over the world. They're in New Guinea. I seen recently finding the missing. Any other major points you want to think of? We're almost at an hour. I don't want to be too long, but I'm happy to talk.
Yeah. No, I think we've kind of hit the wave tops of what you wanted to to talk about here. And in Jeff's book, he gives a really, really good account of the Getchy Patrol. He must have found a few more sources that I wasn't able to locate, but it is I guess today you'd call it an urban myth, that they were lured down there and ambushed, and really it was pretty much an ill-advised expedition when you think you had you lost the regimental surgeon, Doc Pratt. You lost one of. I mean, I can't believe that that Lieutenant Corey was even allowed on the island, because he was part of the team that broke the famous Japanese winds code.
I know, just you shake your head at that. I'm going, obviously Vandergrift didn't know about that, but Getchy should have known better to throw him.
Should have known and taken him. I mean, if he'd have been captured alive, and they found out about that, I mean, that would have been a huge intelligence failure on our part, had he been captured. And I, from Japanese accounts that I've read, they actually thought that this was kind of like a night combat assault landing, because their defenses were anchored along the west bank of that river.
Yeah, you can see it here in this photo here.
Right.
This was taken the 18th aerial from the 18th of August. This is 6 days after the Getchy Patrol. So as we discussed earlier, the remains of the Getchy Patrol is in this photo. And the Japanese defenses are in this photo too. This shows you how well camouflaged you are under those coconut trees.
Yeah. And so when they landed there, they did that horseshoe type perimeter, but the Japanese were able to use internal lines to bring more troops to the forefront to annihilate them. And you have all these things about, the surrender flag and all that, which was probably a Japanese national ensign. And so it really wasn't this complicated ambush that the Japanese set up. It was just kind of two ignorant armies colliding at a point on the map, and it just didn't bode well for Getchy and the rest of those Marines in that patrol.
No, it didn't. And once again, Getchy didn't listen to Bill Whaling, who
No,
had done a patrol, as you know, earlier, a day before up in that area. And he said, that's a hornet's nest. Don't go to the mouth of Matanicow, and proposed landing. That's where I've got on this map here. That's where they're supposed to land. And that during the day, remember, they landed during the day, then moved away, speak to hopefully the Korean laborers and the ones who want to surrender. And then all the resistance on the island will be finished. But they didn't know there was a whole fresh unit of the Special Naval Landing Force and some of the. No, these wasn't the fresh unit. These were some of the guys in the guard company that was there, and they had dug in. And remember the naval warrant officer, or the captured Japanese they had. That was the whole thing. They thought he deceived them. He tricked them. This was ambush. And if the accounts actually said that as soon as they were going to land in that area, he started. I think Few or another guy said he started yelling and screaming and gibbering and jabbering in their words. Right. No, don't land here. Don't land here. These not the people I was saying. These are the bad people. Same thing with Whaling. These are the hornet's nest. Did you hear that as soon as they took him up, because they had the Guadalcanal Diary. I spoke not too long ago on a podcast on Guadalcanal Diary on the movie, but when they've taken him up like the rope around his throat, leading him up. Have you heard the accounts? I don't know which one of the accounts I read, one of the survivors, that they actually shot the Japanese offhand as soon as the ambush started. What sergeant was carrying this Japanese with a rope? As soon as Getchy got shot in the head and went down, he turned around and shot the Japanese right offhand, thinking it was a trap. Did you hear? Have you heard that one?
Yeah, that was Platoon Sergeant Caldrider who did that.
Yeah, he shot him right offhand. He goes, "Oh, you tricked us."
Yeah,
but like I mentioned before, and with Jeff and in my video, how the Goettche Patrol set the stage, that, and then obviously the Battle of Alligator Creek, less than 2 weeks later, that how the Japanese wouldn't surrender, and then the fighting over at Tulagi, how they wouldn't surrender in the caves, and that kind of the deceitful Japanese, they would blow themselves up when the corpsmen would come to them, and then the Getchy Patrol, how they tricked these guys, and that kind of set the stage, especially for the Marines, didn't it, for the rest of the Pacific War?
It did.
Yeah, that's why this was a very infamous or famous scene, or in the beginning of the war. Anyway, Joe, it was good to have you. I'm glad you spent a bit of time talking. I know the guys, the viewers are really, and girls, sorry, I have to say that now. The people, I'm not allowed to say people. Can I say people anymore? Anyway, but people will get. I know they'll get a lot out of this, and they'll enjoy our talk. I mean, it's just two Guadalcanal guys talking about this, and you're very experienced resource on Guadalcanal, and I'm glad to have you on anytime. We can just I guess bullshit about anything Guadalcanal wise, or Marine Corps wise, or Pacific War wise, if you want. And if people want to listen to us gibber and jabber, and I'm happy for them too. So if you got any parting words, so to speak.
Well, don't sell yourself short, Dave. I mean, you lived there for 2 years, and that last time I was over there with you, I learned a lot from you, especially about the Battle of Bloody Ridge. And I was even though for the viewers, even though you read this stuff, it takes you a long, long time, years to digest it, to walk the terrain, and to really understand that battle. The thing that most people tell me on the tour is, "Man, I never knew it looked like this." And so you're only getting one dimension when you're reading. If you're not walking it and walking with somebody who understands it, I see, like I say, I'm not going to attack the other tours. They're good guys in those tours, and they do a great job. But it's really hard to talk about a Marine Corps battle if you've never been a Marine. So that's all I can tell you about that. If you don't understand the culture, that's all interwoven in this thing, and it takes a while. It takes a while to learn that.
And I'm happy to. Thanks for that, Joe. And I totally agree. That's like if you've been an author, you need to walk the ground. You can read. I can know when someone's written a book, good book, but they've never walked the ground because it looks good. You can research everything and read everything and look at maps until you walk the ground and go, well, this map doesn't coincide with this. And you don't really understand it until you really study it deeply. And that gave me the benefit of being there for especially 2 years straight. And then all the other small trips, 3 straight years on Guadalcanal, with the whole intent of all my off-duty time is to study this battle or study this campaign. And that's why, we've discussed the Barcelona incident many, many times. And when I read different things, different accounts, for those who don't know, they go, oh yeah, that's quite believable. And once again, I'll give a disclaimer. Barcelona, what he did is great. He earned a Medal of Honor. Don't get me wrong there. But once again, everything, a lot of things gets inflated, as you know. And when you've seen it in the Marines, here's this guy. They tell a story about him, and all of a sudden it gets inflated. He become legend. But for example, and it goes back to what you're saying about leading tours and things like that would have a bit of an experience. Now, my last job in the Marine Corps, I was a heavy machine gun platoon sergeant. Same thing as Barcelona, heavy machine gun platoon sergeant. That's what was my role. So I looked at it when I examined the Barcelona incident and walked the ground and looked at the terrain and put everything in perspective, and looking at it from the lens of a heavy machine gun platoon sergeant. And I know that it was 60, 70 years difference, but I've read all the manuals and everything from that time. So that thing, shooting a 50 cal then isn't that much different shooting a 50 cal today, or a 30 cal, whatever. The machine gun tactics are the same. So that allowed me, with that information, to go down there. For example, Barcelona, you hear stories about the bodies were piling up. And in the Pacific series, it showed him running out in front of the lines, and he's pulling bodies off himself, right? But I'll read the actual account by Barcelona, his own testimony. Barcelona said he moved his machine gun around. The one he had, not in a bunker, but the one he had, laying out 2 feet from the other one, the one he brought over and laid in the jungle flat. He was moving his machine gun around. Now, why was he moving his machine gun around? All right, he didn't say anything about running out in front of him and pulling bodies off. He mentions that bodies were stacking on the 4-foot barbed wire. But as a heavy machine gun platoon sergeant who was very experienced, like Barcelona, that was he loved machine guns. He's not going to run out there by himself, knowing there's Japanese running all through there and dead and wounded Japanese aren't. He's not going to pull those. He's going to stay on his machine gun, isn't he? And if he needs a clear field of fire, what's he going to do? He's going to move his gun around. He'd said during a fight, he'd move his gun 1 foot here, 2 foot here, and he'd move it around. So why is he moving it around? He's moving around to get a clear field of fire because the bodies are stacking up. That's what he's doing. And you look at it from a machine gunner's point of view. But if you didn't have that background or experience, you're thinking, okay, that's feasible. I will believe that. But then if I was a machine gun platoon sergeant, I'd go, that's stupid. Why would I run out in front and during a firefight and move bodies when I can just move my gun around? It's a little thing about that. That's just one little anecdote I can think of, an example. So anyway, I think me and you could talk forever on this. So, and we have. So we'll keep it short, and I'm happy to end now. It's like you said, it's a good wave top. I'll have to use that term. I haven't used that one. Ending point, so to speak. So I've really enjoyed having you on today, Joe, and good chatting with you again. And out in California, I know it's Australia. It's probably it's an afternoon there in California. It's 8:30 in the morning here in Australia. And we're the seasons are flipped. We're going to summer now. But you're in California. You're in Southern California. Seasons don't really change there.
No.
Has it ever rained? When I was in California, it never rained. Yeah. All right, Joe. It was good to talk to you again, and I think this is a good point to end it. And viewers, if you got any questions, just put it in the comments. If you want to speak to Joe, I can give you some ways to contact him. If you got any questions for him, I can relay some information to him if you need to. So, Joe, mate, it's been good having you on. So, I'll see you next time, buddy.
Okay, Dave. Semper Fidelis.
All right.